So I'm going to talk to you about this new company we've set up called GABA Labs. And you can see that there, its mission is something that I imagine all of you would like to see enacted, which is something that you can drink to have fun in social situations, but with much, much reduced risk of harm. That comes when you drink what you normally drink, which is called alcohol. And we are in the process of developing a number of alternatives to alcohol that will give you the benefits, but with much reduced harms. And we're doing that, of course, because this is an enormous market. The alcohol drinks market is $1 trillion. The non-alcohol drinks market is $1 trillion. And somewhere between those two, we think there's a serious multi-billion opportunity to find a functional drink that people get pleasure from, that refreshes and allows you to really engage in those social situations that alcohol does. So the way we're going about this is developing molecules which some of which are found in nature and some of which we are developing ourselves as specific components of drinks. And the target is relaxation and sociability. And the vision then is a twofold. The first is that we do have a drink already made, and if after this presentation you can go and talk to the team, you can talk to Jen and Charlie, who are at the left-hand end of the bar there, and they're selling the drink Sentia, which is our first product. Or you can come and talk to me about how you might invest in the real future, which is to make an ingredient which can be licensed, and will be licensed to any drinks company in the world to allow them to make any drink they like. So eventually, there will be GABA Labs products inside drinks in the same way as there's Intel inside computers. And there will be a completely new product range of functional but safer drinks. And it's probably obvious to all of you that there's a huge need for this. The alcohol industry is the last industry to be disrupted. It's been going for at least 40,000 years. We have evidence of a brewing of mead from honey at least 40,000 years ago, and it hasn't changed. The technology is still the same. You still use sugar, you put some kind of yeast on it, the yeast converts the sugar into alcohol, and you drink it. But the consequences of drinking are very stark. Over 3 million premature deaths a year in the world from drinking alcohol. And in fact, if alcohol was discovered today, unquestionably it would be illegal. But we have a very, you might call it a blinkered approach to alcohol. Why is that? It's because we like drinking, and drinking serves an enormous social function. I mean, there can be very few people in this room who haven't used alcohol in social situations. Almost all of us meet partners or friends through drinking. But things are beginning to change, and the new millennials who are becoming more health conscious than the older generation like me are beginning to reject that, and they're looking for alternatives. And currently, the really only alternative that's been available has been drinks that were alcohol-containing but no longer are. So non-alcoholic drinks that taste of gin but don't have an effect. And though they serve a purpose, they don't really do what alcohol does. So they're kind of unsatisfactory if you want to use them in the same way as you would use alcohol to promote sociability. And over the last 20 years, I've been working to progress the idea that we could replace alcohol with something that was as effective for what most of us want it for, which is relaxation and sociability, but with much less harm. And in fact, you can see there was a government report that I headed up back in 2005, which laid out this vision of replacing alcohol. And it became something of an interest to scientific groups. You see that cover of New Scientist, I'm taking the demons out of drink. The concept, of course, is easy, but going from a concept to a reality is much more challenging. And the reasons for that are largely because the effects we want from alcohol are found in the brain. And the brain is actually quite a challenging organ to work with. But luckily, I'm a psychiatrist and a psychopharmacologist, so I do have some insights and some knowledge, and we have been progressing that since then. So the goal is very straightforward. We make a beverage ingredient that can mimic the effects of alcohol, so that when you drink it, you will get what most of us want, which is sociability, relaxation. But it is very blue sky. And one of the big challenges, and one of the reasons I'm pleased to be talking to you today, is that a lot of people have never even considered doing it. They thought it was too hard, too challenging, or unnecessary. But as I've already mentioned, the necessity is becoming clearer and clearer, and the desire is getting bigger too. So what do we want to do? Why do most of us drink? Well, most of us drink for relaxation. And how many of you are going to drink after tonight, after this talk tonight? I mean, in fact, are any of you not going to drink tonight? Just a couple. Okay. You want to reduce anxiety. You want to take away the stress of the day. But particularly, we want conviviality. And one of the reasons we believe that alcohol has played such an important role in the whole history of humans is that it helps people get together. You may know that there are now new anthropological theories that enormous temples like Stonehenge were built so that people could come together. They were sites for the first great drinking parties. And drinking allowed people to come together and play, have pleasure, rather than be at war. So we want sociability, and we want to have fun as well. But most of us don't want to have the negative consequences, like vomiting, like amnesia, like hangovers, and of course not addiction. So we're trying to avoid these. We're trying to find a product which doesn't sedate you, so you fall asleep, but it doesn't impair your cognition, so you don't know what you're talking about. We don't want memory loss, so that you do things and then deny them, even though you've got them on video. We don't want people falling over. We don't want aggression. We don't want a hangover. And in the end, we really don't want what kills quite a few people. 3 young people a week in Britain die of alcohol poisoning, and that they die from respiratory depression and from vomiting, and those two things together lead to death. So alcohol is an acute toxin, but it's also a long-term toxin. You know, of course, about the problems of drinking and the liver, but you also know that probably 15% of people who drink regularly end up being dependent, and that's a lot of people. There's also growing evidence that alcohol leads to brain damage, even when it's consumed in moderate amounts. At least 8 cancers are attributable in part to drinking, and many, many other diseases. So it would be extraordinarily beneficial to mankind if we could reduce the harms of alcohol, but still give people what they want from drinking. Now, as I said, the brain's a complicated organ, but over the last 20 years, we have been exploring, and as have many other scientists, the targets in the brain that produce the beneficial effects and those that produce the negative effects. So this slide is pretty simple. If it's a green arrow, it's good, and if it's a red arrow, it's bad. There's a lot of red arrows. Many different parts of the brain are responsible for many of the negative effects of alcohol. But the positive effects, such as sociability and relaxation, the green arrows, they're localized in very high-level frontal parts of the brain, the parts of the brain which are largely responsible for the remarkable ability of humans to socialize. We are a social animal, and we use our frontal cortex to do that socialization. So within that part of the brain, there are receptors for this neurotransmitter GABA. And that is where alcohol works. to promote the effects of GABA to give you the effects you want, the effects of 1 or 2 glasses of beer or wine. But the red arrows are where all the other problems occur. And those problems come from alcohol interacting with other transmitters. There are 80 transmitters in the brain. Alcohol interacts with a large number of them. And those cause the problems I mentioned in the previous slide, the problems we don't want, the problems of amnesia and dependence and hangover. Now, GABA is a complicated system. It's a widespread system. Every part of the brain has GABA. But there are multiple different subtypes of the GABA receptor. And that complexity turns out to be to our advantage, because once we determine what particular subtype is in a particular part of the brain we want to target, then we can use sophisticated chemistry and molecular modeling approaches to target that receptor. And that's what we've been doing, and that's what we have now achieved. So the term you'll hear used over the next few years is the concept of alcarel. So alcarel is an ingredient. It's a small molecule. In fact, it's many small molecules. We have 3 different chemical series at present. And although it's a little bit corny, the reason we developed the term alcarel was a direct takeoff of canderel. You all know about canderel as one of the numerous different sweeteners which you can use to make drinks palatable if you like sweet drinks, but which do not have the calorific content of sugar. So alcarel is the alcohol alternative that doesn't have the negative consequences of alcohol. We've got a very experienced team. We've got experts both from the sides of chemistry and toxicology, and also from food development. And we're linking with a number of academic groups, because the economic burden of alcohol damage in Britain is about 30 billion a year. Worldwide, it's obviously hundreds of billions. So there's a lot of academic interest in trying to do or help us achieve our goal of reducing the harms of alcohol. But because it's never been done before, we're facing an interesting challenge. How do you take an ingredient to market as an alternative drink? The approach we're taking is that of a novel food ingredient. Our initial target is the US, because the US has what's called the GRAS system, which is generally regarded as safe, and that is a concept which essentially lays out a roadmap through which you can take a new molecule or compound through a series of safety tests, run it by an independent expert group, and if they accept that it's safe, then you can sell it as a food ingredient. There are supposedly similar procedures or processes available in Europe, but no one's ever done it in Europe because they're not as transparent, but it has been done in the States relatively frequently. We don't actually know where the UK stands at present. We don't know whether UK food regulation is still under Europe, or whether it will morph and essentially become a subsidiary of the FDA. So at present, we're not focusing on the UK. We're focusing on taking our product through the US. And of course, one other great advantage of that is that is a massively, massively bigger market. And there are interesting parallels for disruptive technologies that you'll all be familiar with. You'll all be familiar with vaping, how vaping has transformed, certainly in many countries, definitely in this country, the smoking market by producing a less harmful alternative. And cannabidiol, perhaps less obvious to you all, but cannabidiol as the non-psychoactive but well-being element of cannabis is obviously an enormous market, both in terms of well-being and also to some extent in terms of health. So I want to emphasize that we're not taking on the drinks industry. We're not competing with the drinks industry. The drinks industry, and there are probably some of you from the drinks industry here, the drinks industry knows its time has come. It's known that for quite a long time. It just hasn't been forced to change. But it is being forced to change now. It's being forced to change because people want it to change, because young people are moving away from drinking. It's been estimated And we saw this with the show of hands. Perhaps up to 20% of aspiring young people in London don't want to drink alcohol. And they don't want to drink alcohol because they want to be functioning healthier and they want to be functioning in a more efficient way. They don't want hangovers. So we're seeing people switching away from alcohol completely, or some switching away from alcohol in the week. But most of them would actually like an alternative. They would like something that they could drink with their friends and their partners, but which would not mess up with their sleep, which would allow them to wake at 3 in the morning when their children wake up and look after them without having a terrible headache, and not interfere with their performance at work the next day. And the drinks industry knows that. It knows it has to cater to this rising tide of health-conscious young people. So it knows that what we're trying to do is important. And we have seen in the last 10 years, as we've been developing this technology and beginning to engage in the public debate about it, the drinks industry has gone from saying, that'll never happen, to saying, could we buy you? And we've said no, because we're a bit skeptical they might want to buy us to kill us. But our model is very clear. Our model is we will not be owned by a single drinks company. We will make available an ingredient that can be used by any drinks company to make any drink they like. So any drink that currently has alcohol in it could be have the alcohol removed, we know how to do that, and then replaced by Alcarel. And I think in 30 years' time, that'll be a very significant proportion of the drinks market. But on the way, we wanted to test the water, and we wanted to explore the concept and begin to engage in a public discussion. And so we set up a company called the Social Drinks Company. And on the bar at the back, you can go and taste our first products. And the way we developed these products was to go to botanicals. We know that plants make substances which historically have been used to produce relaxation and sociability that work on the GABA system. And after several years of research, we came up with the first botanical drink we call the first botanical GABA spirit, a combination of different herbs, all of which are food grade, all of which are approved as foods, which together produce the effect we want of the sociability, relaxing effects of about a glass or two of wine or beer. And of course, because they're all already pre-approved as foods or food supplements, we can sell them, and we are. And we've been now selling Sentia for several years. And there it is. That's the drink. It's actually been around for 2.5 years now. It's doing rather well. It's become quite popular, particularly after the Times science writer, who was very skeptical, came to us in dry January to find out whether this actually really did the business, whether it did produce an effect or whether it was all placebo. And if you read his article, you'll discover that he became very convinced, because he did actually kind of half fall over when he left the bar we were in. So I think we're fairly confident now that we know from the experience of many tens of thousands of drinkers, and also some of the experiments we've done, that we can produce with these botanical concoctions the effects we want. And there are two now. There's the Sentia Red, which is more for small, intimate occasions, like going out for dinner with someone that you want to make friends with. And then there's Sentia Black, which has recently been released, which is more for partying. It gives you a bit more energy and drive. And the core ingredient in both are herbs which target the GABA system to mimic the effect we want, the sweet spot of a couple of glasses or so of either wine or beer. And I'm going to finish now. If there are scientists in the audience who want to know more about this, we've produced this paper recently, which is a very systematic overview of how we can approach this question of alcohol alternatives. It's published in a very prestigious journal called Nutrients. It's already had several thousand downloads. They're free. You can get it yourself. And it lays out the science, the concept, and also the targets in terms of the molecular targets in the brain, and also the herbal targets that we're putting together in our drink Sentia. So I will stop now and just say I'll take questions, but those of you who want to stay till the rain stops, please go to the bar at the back. And I can see, are the team still there? Jen, are you still there? Yeah, Jen and Charlie are still there. So they're going to serve you with a Sentia if you go back there. I'll stop now and take questions. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I'm just going to take some. Does anyone? It's quite an intimate audience now. So does anyone actually have a question they want to ask David? Yeah, go on. You might have to shout because I don't know if we've got a mic. Testing and how it performed with consumers.
Yes, so absolutely. So we've done, obviously in building, it took several years. There are 11 separate herbs in Sentia. And there are actually 3 levels, 3 separate groups of herbs. There are the herbs which work on the GABA system directly in the brain, and then in slightly different ways, but they add together and complement each other. And then there are herbs which facilitate the compounds from the first set of herbs getting into the body. And then there's a couple other herbs which facilitate those products getting from the blood into the brain. So it's a kind of 3-stage process. And so it took quite a lot of testing of different combinations till we get what we wanted. And then we've tested it on healthy volunteers and drinkers, and we've tested it against other drinks like cannabidiol drinks. And we've discovered it works, and people like it. People feel that it relaxes them. We can show their scores of liking and their perceptions of it being a bit like alcohol change. Yes, so we're very confident that we've achieved at least the first step in our journey of finding an alternative to alcohol. Say it louder. The taste. Yes. So this is a really important point. We've brought together scientists like me who know a bit about GABA and the brain, but also people who know about making drinks. And our lead drinks expert is Vanessa. She's not here at present. So yes, we have to give her a lot of credit because she has made it extremely tasty as well. So it is actually a drink that is pleasurable to drink, but also gives you the effects. Now, the main, what we want is a drink with the effect, but having the benefits of both something that, for most people, not everyone, it's got quite a strong taste. Both of them have quite strong taste, and some people definitely prefer one, and some people definitely prefer the other, the red or the black. Some people like both. But whether you like the taste or not is not central to whether you're going to get any benefit from it. Because the other thing we recommend is, it's like the strong vermouth, both of them are. So most people prefer to have them diluted. Either we've got plenty of tonic out there, or ginger beer, or you can make all sorts of mocktails with them, like the greenies and that. Or you can just put it into orange juice or apple juice, if you prefer the taste of those. So the taste is not central, but it can be, for some people, it is something that they enjoy neat.
David, I have a question for you. A lot of the people in the audience will probably be familiar with, I'll come to you in a sec, with Seedlip.
Yes.
Which is one of the more well-known brands. Could you tell us the difference between, is Seedlip follow any of this science, or is it completely different?
So Seedlip is juniper water. Okay, let me explain a bit. Seedlip is a really brilliant idea. Seedlip is taking gin, which is basically alcohol with juniper. Gin is called gin from the Dutch, Genevieve, which is juniper. So basically gin is alcohol flavored with juniper. And they take the alcohol out, so you're left with juniper water. So it tastes like gin, but it doesn't burn your mouth, and it doesn't relax you, or it doesn't have the positive alcohol effects. But obviously an enormously clever product, because it's now, they've been bought by Diageo. They've managed to move on to do other things with the proceeds of that. And it started the discussion But it is just something you can have in your hand that looks like gin, but it doesn't do anything other than look like gin or taste like gin, but it doesn't have that functional effect. And as I've said, for people who don't want a functional effect, well, that's fine, but most people do want a functional effect. And it's actually quite an expensive alternative to lemonade, whereas...
Right, yeah, it's pretty bloody expensive, which is a lesson in branding, I suppose.
Yes. Well, considering it doesn't pay any tax either, it's very expensive.
Right. So I know we've got another question. Actually, we have a question down here. Rob.
Yeah, I can definitely say it tastes amazing. It's really,
thank you.
Really tasty, yeah. I was wondering, in the sort of testing from the scientific point of view, have you had any interaction with people who have previously become dependent on alcohol and what impact it has on them and how they react with it?
That's a hugely important question, absolutely. And we haven't formally tested because that's actually quite a difficult thing to do. But what we have discovered is that we have been running parties, we've been serving Sentia now. I have a charity called Drug Science. We have once a year we have a big celebration at the House of Lords where we make Sentia available. Quite often people come up to me and say, you don't know this, but I'm an abstinent alcoholic. And I've drunk Sentia and I wait with anticipation and they say, I love it, because it doesn't induce the craving that alcohol would induce. So we haven't yet had anyone write to us, and we get probably at least one person a day writing in with all sorts of comments. We haven't had anyone say, I took it and it made me crave or want to go back to drinking. So I cannot say it won't, but what I can say is it is deliberately targeted to avoid the neurotransmitters in the brain which we know drive dependence and addiction. So, I can't say categorically, and I certainly don't recommend people who stop drinking to drink it. I really don't. But a lot do, and so far, so good. Fingers crossed.
That's fascinating. And we have another question just down here.
Yeah, two short questions, if I may. Firstly, can you drive if you drink this? And secondly, what happens if you have one and you've been drinking alcohol?
Yes, so the second one's, we can say reasonably confidently, it doesn't add to the effects of alcohol. It doesn't seem to make alcohol more powerful or more intoxicating. And there's sort of technical reasons why that is, but I won't go into them now. The first one is, this is not a way of avoiding getting breathalyzed. This is a way of having pleasure, socializing, without the harms of alcohol. Now, if you are relaxed, and as you will be after Sentia, we would advise you not to drive, because that would be irresponsible. But one of the good things about Sentia is that it lasts much less long than alcohol. So whereas alcohol, it takes at least an hour for a unit of alcohol to clear your system, Sentia will have less impact on your function than a unit of alcohol. It might have no impact at all, but I can't say categorically it won't. But it will almost certainly have less impact, and it will clear faster. So it's very likely you will be free of any subjective effects within an hour, which for most people would probably be satisfactory. Yeah.
Fascinating.
Was the question there?
Is there one more question? Yeah, the lady in the middle.
Sorry, just curious, is there a baseline where if you drink it, you'll always be at a certain level, or if you kept drinking it,
yeah,
you'd
great
get
question.
more drunk, effectively?
Yeah, so we recommend, we recommend, based on the food standards approvals, no more than 100 mils of the drink a day. If you drink that, you will never get drunk. Even if you drank the whole bottle, you won't get drunk like you get drunk on alcohol, because it cannot do that, because it doesn't work on the brain systems that get you really drunk. But we don't recommend you doing that, because what happens if you drink a lot is that actually the effect just lasts longer rather than gets more intense. There is a ceiling effect to it.
Well, fascinating and very important work that David's doing. I think the interest in the questions clearly show there's a lot of kind of desire for more information. So please put your hands together for our last speaker of the day, David.
Thank you.